This is Seeing Red, now in our 15th season of bringing you the best in independent Red Bulls news and opinion. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Fishkin and Joe Goldstein.
It's Mark Fishkin on Seeing Red here with Mike Batista tonight. The Red Bulls went down to Philly, a Philly team that had lost 5 straight and were winless in their last 8 games, and they were having trouble scoring goals. And one would think this was the night for New York to beat Philly for the first time since October of 2019. It did not happen because poor finishing did them in. We got some great goaltending, but once again, New York allows for a less than impressive result against a team that, frankly, in 2024 they should beat. Mike Batista, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Had a good holiday weekend, a lot of soccer across the country. So, things can be better in Red Bull land, but all things considered, it's all right.
Yeah, I think that's the message coming out of that. I think Red Bulls fans have a right to be disappointed over the last few results. But first of all, I get more into it. Like and subscribe, as we say every week, folks. We're nearing 500 subscribers on YouTube. That's a wonderful milestone. So please, if you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe, even better. So New York goes down to Philly on a swampy night. Noah Ayala said after the match that he had never played in conditions like this. Once League's Cup start, he'll get used to playing in conditions like this. But New York allowed Philadelphia at times some really good looks. And yes, they're without Julian Carranza, who they just transferred, but Daniel Gazdag is still on this team. And, Philly had opportunities to get ahead in this game, Mike.
No, they did. You saw the game was very much in waves. Like New York had those 2 early chances early on from the bicycle kick attempt from Carlos Cornell, from Cameron Harper.
Yeah.
And then you had a shot that should have been a goal, but it was wide right by Lewis Morgan. And then the game started to tilt more towards Philly. So yeah, both teams, this game could have been 5 goals, but
yes,
both teams just messed up their chances.
Yeah, Manuel with an opportunity to win it somewhat late. Stop me if you've heard this before. Carlos Coronel stood in his head to make a double save late in the second half that definitely earned him not only a clean sheet, but a team of the match day honors. So congrats to Carlos. And, once again, Carlos at the Copa America didn't play a minute, and his team got trucked, and then they canned the coach. So, you can certainly feel about what could have been for Coronel at the Copa America, but the good news is he's back. We'll hear later about an important player for Colorado that may be missing if Canada can do the impossible on Tuesday night. Shame on me when Coronel went to Sean Nealis somewhat late in the match. I said, oh my God, they're going to 5 in the back and they're going to circle the wagons and try to get out of here with a draw. But what that did, he shifted the formation to a 3-4-3 that we have not seen very often out of Shores. And the chances just started coming. It was a brilliant tactical shift that I certainly owned up to, that I thought I got completely wrong. And again, right until the final whistle, New York had opportunities. Our forwards once again proving ineffective. Morgan not necessarily had his aiming shoes on for the night. In New York, for the 13th straight time, does not beat the Philadelphia Union. Again, frustrating. I tweeted earlier this after the match. New York went up to New England having won 3 games in 9, and they lost. And then they had DC, who had 2 points over the previous 8 games, and they drew. And now they go to Philly, winless in 8, and they drew. And I mean, what does this tell you about this team, Mike?
I think it goes to say that the New York Red Bulls are a very hard team to beat, but on the other hand, they are also a team that will not beat the right teams. And that's a middle of the pack. It reminds me almost of, I made this joke with someone the other night where even though I was young at the time, going back and watching it, it almost feels like watching the 07-08 Giants. They're like, oh, they're so they win games in the worst way, or they get the results they have to in the worst way, but then they don't win the games they're supposed to.
Right.
But we all know how that season ended. I'm not saying the Red Bulls are going to do that by any means.
Yes.
Defense does win championships. I don't care who says it. It's true. And Carlos Cornell came into this game with the biggest chip on his shoulder.
Yes.
He is mad. I'm not friends with him. No one knows what's going through his mind except for his teammates and family. But he played 2 friendly games before Copa America, right?
Get set.
Yes. And then he played no Copa America games for a team that got no points. He missed out on club time, and it looked like he was going to be the guy for this team, for his national team. And to see how things turned out, it's just going to, I think, light a fire in him more to get more results in MLS. And I think we saw him will the Red Bulls to a point.
Yep.
Last night or on.
Yeah, and blah blah. A point on the road, it is fine. New York has had too many of these nights. After winning 4 of 5, New York is now unbeaten in 5 with only 1 win and 4 draws. And what you're seeing is now the top teams in the East starting to pull away from New York. Cincinnati dropped a house on Messi-less Miami, just like the Red Bulls did. They're up to 48. Miami is in second place with 47. Columbus still with 2 matches in hand on New York at 39, and they're Red Bulls at 36. And so you say to yourself, even with this kind of draggy, you can't even call it a swoon. They're not losing games. They've still, I'll say it every week. They've lost 4 out of 22 matches. They are, as you said, Mike, they're hard to beat, but at the same time, they're in 4th place in the East, which is fine. And you can say to yourself, what could have been? This team could have been angling in and playing, muscling in on the big boys at the top. This team is not a top team yet. They're not an elite team. An elite team would put these poorly performing teams away. And also, had to be noted that Emil Forsberg was put on the injured list, not just on the injury report. He's on the injured list. He will be out. He'll miss the next 6 matches for New York. He'll be out for at least 4 weeks. And there may be, if I read the release right, there may be some cash dispensation to New York because their big DP player will be out for a significant amount of time. And someone said to me, well, has he missed more games than he's played? Well, he's played in 14, and the Red Bulls have played in 22. So he's missed a good number of games with injuries and international absences, and he'll miss a whole bunch more going into Leagues Cup. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I do need to just on the table itself. When I was looking at the table and I saw DC United at the bottom,
and Philly at the bottom too, right?
And Philly at the bottom. But I also remembered when the Red Bulls played DC, they were within like 3 points of the final playoff spot. And to see just how close everything is underneath 6th place, it's ridiculous. And then you have another like bunch of teams between 3rd and 6th. It's like, man, there are groups forming here right now. There's the top 2, the next 4, and everyone else. That's going to be very fun, especially towards the later end of the season.
The bottom 9 teams in the East are within 7 points of each other.
Oh, that's so good. That's gonna be great chaos. But no, I think look, if you're gonna put him on the injury list and make him miss a month plus, it's good to know that the Red Bulls are gonna prioritize the regular season and not the Leagues Cup. Because the Leagues Cup, while it has its benefits, it still is a huge annoyance on teams to stop the regular season for a whole month and to disrupt everything. So if you want to say, hey, we're going to compete, we have a team with depth, but we're going to rest our main guys so we can get healthy and we can go into the final stretch of the season doing what we need to do to get those points. I think that's the totally right choice. But
on the show, I would play the kids in Leagues Cup. I'd just play the kids.
We're going the Open Cup route.
Yes, you've got 2 group games. You've got to beat Toronto. Toronto's lost 5 in a row, and you advance into the round of 32. I don't think an Emil Forsberg less team is going to beat Pachuca, but again, we'll deal with that when we get there. I would just go all out to win that Toronto game and then see what happens. But nevertheless, you want final thought, Mike?
Oh, I was going to say is that it's with how the season's going, the Red Bulls know like exactly what we're talking about with they are leading points on the table. So I think last time I was on this show, we talked about how many winnable games are in the second half.
We did.
And how many, honestly, an Emil Forsberg less team on paper should get points in those games.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be safe than sorry, it's better to have all your guns ready for those.
New York has 3 games before League's Cup, and at Colorado, and then home for Montreal and home for Cincinnati next week. But nevertheless, we turn our attention back to the game against Philly, a scoreless draw. For me, Bull of the Week is Carlos Coronel. Do you have a rejoinder, sir, or are you joining me here?
I would join you. Listen, if Cameron Harper made that bicycle kick, it would be him. But Coronel, like I said before, totally in the zone and 100% deserving of any accolade. He already got Team of the Week. He deserves the Bull of the Week from us.
Yes, he absolutely does. Before we talk about Colorado, J-My has found his way to the Olympic team. It's a big honor. He's the first New York Red Bull player. Metro Stars had 2, Tim Howard and Ramiro Corrales, made the 2000 team. But nevertheless, the first Red Bull to make it. Exciting for him. We're going to talk about it with Steve Cangialosi in a few minutes. Your overall thoughts on J-My and the opportunity he has to show in front of a big audience?
It's awesome for him. I think that the Red Bulls have cultivated a lot of young talents that had potential to go on this team. I still think that if an injury does come up, like we might see like an Edelman pop in there too, but to see J-My capitalize and continue his growth and to get national team honors to represent his country in France, it's awesome. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, me as well. It should be fun. It should be fun to watch. J-My is now away. He's away with the Olympic team as they're getting ready to prepare. So
we don't think about that part. We're just happy for J-My.
Well, it matters a lot based on our opponent, and that's a great transition to looking at Colorado. So I am going to start the visual part of our show. Colorado Rapids are the host on Saturday night at 9:30 Eastern at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. It's an OG 96er. Colorado is having a very Red Bulls-like season, 11-8-4 for 37 points. That's 4th in the West. The Red Bulls, of course, are 4th in the East. Colorado scored 44 and conceded 37 in 23 matches. They are a solid home team this year, 7-2-2 at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. They're tied for 6th in MLS goals per match. They are a highly effective attacking team, but we'll get to it, with almost 2 goals per game. They're first in MLS in big chances created, and they are tied for 4th in goals scored after the 75th minute. Also important to note here, they are first in MLS in penalties awarded. Colorado has been gifted 10 penalty kick attempts in the league. That's 3 more than second place Seattle. If you're wondering, the Red Bulls have been given 6 penalty kick opportunities over the course of the season. They are near the bottom of the league in yellow cards picked up as well, and near the bottom of the league in red cards. Only a single red card awarded to a Rapids player. So they are a disciplined team that New York will have to tackle. A lot of changes. This was a wholesale renovation undergoing in Colorado, led by our old friend Chris Armas. Out our friend Andrew Gutman, friend of the show, Luis Diaz, Max Alves, Sam Nicholson, Marco Illich, the goalie, all found themselves out of Commerce City. And in comes names that you must know. Zach Steffen, formerly of Columbus, formerly of Man City. His European adventure seemingly only over has found a role at Colorado. Georgi Mihailovic, also coming in from AZ in Holland after his European time. And as we'll get to, Georgie is on his way to the Olympic team as one of the 3 overage players and will not play on Saturday. And he is the man that makes it go. Sam Vines, a name you may recall as well. He came back to Colorado from Royal Antwerp. Our old friend, Manhattan's own Omir Fernandez. He of the Hudson Derby hero. Has come back and to play for Chris Armas again. And then Rafael Navarro has 11 goals in 23 starts. He signed from Palmeiras in Brazil after spending the last year on loan. So wholesale changes. When we talk about the Rapids, we have to talk about the notion that any fan of the Red Bulls or Toronto FC, I think, would be surprised to see just how well Chris Armas is doing in Colorado. His players have completely brought in. He's using a similar style to the ones he used in New York with success. Their success is built on hard work and vibes, with players like Cole Bassett and Mihailovic and Rafi Navarro being major contributors. Mihailovic magic, he has 10 goals and 6 assists in 21 appearances this year. But as I mentioned, he will be without, as he is with the U.S. Olympic team. Colorado did without him in their last match against St. Louis, and all they did was win 4-1 against the St. Louis side that had recently changed their coach. And then, is Bombito going to be back? For the last few games, the Rapids, it had to make do with that all-star center back Moisa Bombito, who has been with Canada and Jesse Marsh during their remarkable run. While we do not expect necessarily for Canada to beat Argentina tomorrow night, if the unthinkable happens and Canada will wind up playing for a Copa America title in Miami, then Bobito will not be a factor here. These two teams head-to-head, lots of stats here. It's the 46th all-time meeting for these OG teams. Colorado leads slightly in the overall matchup between these two, but New York has gotten 7 wins in Colorado over the course of their history, and that almost 500 on the road. That's pretty good. The road team in the series have won the last 3 matches. Last time out, these two teams played 2 years ago at Red Bull Arena on a midweek game that was absolutely bonkers. New York jumped out to a 2-0 lead after 9 minutes, and then a 3-1 lead after 28 minutes, and then the house absolutely collapsed with 3 straight goals from Colorado. A Tom Barlow 97th minute marker made it close, but that was one of the wildest games of that entire 22 season, a 5-4 loss. The last time these teams played at Colorado, the Red Bulls won as part of the 2018 Shield year on goals by Danny Royer and Derek Etienne. All time, you don't often see Gio Savarese on one of these lists, but nevertheless, both he and Thierry Henry have 6 all-time goals against the Rapids, and Lewis Morgan has 1. And so here is a prospective lineup from Chris Armas. He plays a 4-2-3-1. Zach Steffen in goal, 5 clean sheets in 23 matches. Sam Vines with an assist. Dane Andreas Maxo with an assist at center back. And then it'll be either Michael Edwards, a young American, 23-year-old American, or Moise Bombito. I'm pretty sure that'll be Bombito back with the Rapids. He has 2 goals on the season. Keegan Rosenberry, MLS vet, with an assist at right back. The 2 6s, American Cole Bassett, the 22-year-old, 7 goals and 4 assists. He definitely gets more forward than Connor Ronan, an Irishman, with an assist this season. With Mihailovic out, I think Omir Fernandez is going to take the reins as the 10. We know he played the 10 a number of times for New York with a goal and 3 assists. Oliver Loraz, a 25-year-old American, with a goal on the left. Kevin Cabral from France, 4 goals and an assist. And then the striker up top, 11 goals from Brazilian Rafael Navarro. So that all said, sir, welcome back. What can we expect? What are you expecting from what we might see in Colorado on Saturday night?
The Rebels, since I think 2008, they historically are terrible in Colorado.
Except they won the last time out.
Which the way the schedule works, and also COVID was in there.
Yes.
We don't go to Colorado often.
No, we don't.
And
first time in 5 years.
First time in 5 years. And I think before that, it was like a 2-year intervals or something like that. All I'm going to say about this game is I don't know about how sea level or how like how that stuff is going to affect the team.
Yeah.
I will say that Chris Armas, like just from a tactical standpoint, Chris Armas has done a lot with this team, and you've seen how much he's brought in from in MLS, from abroad. He's made the Rapids. They had that one season a couple years ago where they, out of nowhere, just won the Western Conference regular season.
Under Rodney Frazier.
Yes. And then they were eliminated in the first round. And everyone's like, oh, well, that's, MLS for you. But I think Armas is taking this in the right direction of just making a unit that is tough to beat. Kind of, going back to what we were saying about the Red Bulls. And you were saying they're having a Red Bull season. They are not the top team in the West. I think they're somewhere if you look at the overall table of the MLS, Rebels are 6th, and I think Colorado's 5th. They're identical teams in many ways. Yeah. So this game is very hard to say who's going to come out on top or who has any sort of edge.
So you're saying a draw is definitely where you're going, because for me, New York will have to consider what they do with the wingbacks with J-My out. Do we see Kyle Duncan switched over and Dylan Nealis playing, and then what effect that will have certainly on Colorado's attack? We know now that Forsberg won't be around for the next couple of matches, and so does that mean, do you have Van Zier and Morgan up top once again? Do you have Carmona and Cam Harper on the wings trying to drive? I thought Ronald Donkor actually acquitted himself a little bit better against Philly in a car crash kind of game. I liked what I saw from him. I know a lot of Red Bulls fans did as well. And Danny Edelman. I mean, I think it's again, but at altitude for New York.
I mean, is this the game where we see Bento finally make his debut after, just hanging out on the sideline for the entire season?
No.
Is this Is this the game where we see someone step up? As we've seen, out of nowhere, we've seen Cameron Harper go on 3-game goal streaks. We've seen Lewis Morgan have his streak. He scored 9, but it seems like they come in patches. I don't know what kind of game we can expect because, there's going to be some roster shifting that has to happen. But maybe this is the game Dante Van Zier actually, comes up and he doesn't hold the ball for 5 extra seconds in the box and shoots in the right time.
Yeah, perhaps. And again, this is the team that has won more penalty kicks than any team in the league this year, which means the center backs have to be on their best behavior. Andres Reyes, I'm looking at you. That said, your prediction, sir. Colorado hosting New York on Saturday night.
I will give this game the benefit of the doubt and say it's a 1-1 draw, with goals from Lewis Morgan and Omir Fernandez.
All right. Well, listen, the whole team with Chris here is gone, right? And there are very few players that were here. I think it's
Ryan Mira.
It's Ryan Mara, and I think it's Kyle Duncan and Sean Nealis, and I think that's it. I think those are the only players that are still here now that Omer's out with them. So I know that Omer wants to show well. I know that Armas wants to show well. They're a tough team at home, but I'm going to call it another 2-1 Red Bulls win because we're going to keep it positive. When we're next coming back to you on Seeing Red, it's our old friend Steve Cangialosi of Apple TV. So keep it here, won't you? Thanks. We are Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. Red Bulls don't convert again. A sticky, swampy night at Subaru Park. And one man who was there to call all the action is our friend from Apple TV, Steve Cangialosi. Steve, how are you?
I'm fine, Mark. Apologies to the viewing audience on Saturday night as well. If you were watching, you probably know for about 15 minutes, I had a tickle in my throat that I could not get rid of and a raspy voice. And you're only praying in that moment as an announcer that you're not going to have that Jude Bellingham moment and you don't have the voice to meet it. But as you know, Mark,
There
we
was
didn't have that problem
no
Saturday.
moment whatsoever. This Red Bulls team have left a lot of points on the ground over the last couple of weeks during a time in the schedule where, frankly, they've been playing teams far below them on the table, familiar teams to them, and they haven't really been able to secure those wins. What have you seen out of Red Bull over the last few weeks that either gives you reasons for hope that they might pull it together for the end of the season, or maybe some reasons to be concerned?
Woulda, coulda, shoulda, because they could have scored 3 to 4 goals on the night, and a young goalkeeper by Andrew Rick said, no, not on this particular night. It's funny, I had a long talk with the coaches, as I always do, before the game, and I remember talking to Jim Curtin, what's the biggest difference about Red Bull, the matchup this year? And he said, the soccer is a lot more evident than it's ever been. But what I also think, pointing to the game on Saturday night, you also see what the gaping hole is when Emil Forsberg is not there to contribute to that element of the game. And some of this, I think, is very easily understood. He's the best passer on the team. He's the best player on the team. He is the captain of this team. And that's a large hole to fill. And I think what's, disappointing is that we're looking now at this period of time where he's out 4 weeks. That'll bleed at least 2 games into the Leagues Cup for this team. And then are we in this cycle where he gets better, he rehabs the injury, and then all of a sudden there's another international window upon us. And that can be very frustrating for everybody, for the team, for the fans, I'm sure. But to your point, if they do effectively replace Frankie Amaya and if they surprise us with an addition up top, I think those will be compliments to a team that I think you can largely be proud of to this point. Let's be real about this numerically. They're a 9-win team. They got their 9th win last year on the 23rd of September. So right. I think that speaks volumes about what's taken place. I think you and I set the bar a little higher this year, though.
Yeah, and I think Red Bull fans set the bar higher, especially after the great start that they got off to, right? And yes, they're now playing without Frankie Amaya. They're playing without Peter Stroud, who, from what we hear from Coach Forrest, is most likely getting ready to return to practice with the team, which I think is exciting. And then, of course, without Forsberg. And, I think fans have a right to feel that they want more. And as you said, that the bar should be higher. This is a team that is 8th on the Supporter Shield table. And yes, they've missed a lot of crucial points against poor teams. But I guess it's a question of kind of lamenting what could have been. But again, there are 20 MLS teams that would love to be where they are on the table.
There are, but I also think now we're witnessing that separation of the top 3 teams in the East from everybody else in the pack. And if you want to make the case that the Red Bulls can be as optimistic as anyone else in the pack, that's not the nuttiest thing I will hear this week. There are a lot of other teams that would love to be in the position, as you said. I think there's a backbone of this team that is a big part of what their success can potentially be. And by that, I think Carlos Coronel has picked it up a notch. I was surprised to see no longer the number 1 keeper for Paraguay, by the way. I'm sure that didn't sit well with him. So be it. He did come back and have 2 signature moments that got them a result, at least on Saturday night. The center back situation, I think, is interesting with this team. Andres Reyes had a good game on Saturday night, I thought he was effective clearing balls out. For some reason, I'm never comfortable when he and Ayla are together. They're 2 front foot defenders. And I almost think that each one of them is better when Sean Nealis is there to complement them. So the fact that they get out of there with a clean sheet, granted with the big moments from the goalkeeper, is, I think, a minor victory on the night. Amaya is a difficult thing to replace because now you're asking somebody to be all in with this team, going to be so good on second balls as he was. And I know they're making a priority of making sure they replace him. That's easier said than done. And I'm interested to see how Julian de Guzman and his people go out and execute this in the summer transfer window. It appears they have a plan. I'm interested to know what that plan is because I think that's extremely, extremely important. I like what they have on the wing. I'm painting a picture of a team that's almost complete. But if you're going to be in that conversation with the three big Pistons in the East and a couple in the West who are probably just as good, there's got to be more than that.
Yeah, I think there's got to be more than that. And I think part of it comes down to forwards finishing opportunities. And that's something that has really eluded this side over the course of the year. Yes, they have scored plenty of goals. There's been a lot of clean sheets as of late, but frankly, when you're relying on a wing player like Cam Harper to do the damage, and he's done a ton of damage scoring goals for this team, big important goals for this team. I think at the same time, you look at that core of forwards and you have to say, short of Lewis, it's been very, very poor.
I think they could live with Dante Van Zier not scoring if he was providing other things as he was earlier in the season. It's now 9 games, I believe, without a goal or an assist officially for him. They can't live in that kind of universe if they're going to be a winning team. And this is difficult for me to digest because earlier in the season, I can't tell you how many people on that team would tell me, no, this is a good player. He checks all the right boxes. He is all in. He is a good guy, contrary to some things that kind of hit the surface last year that led to a 6-game suspension. And he is one of the most unselfish players on the field that you will see. And I think that was somewhat evident in the one big chance that Lewis Morgan had earlier in the game. There's Van Zier serving it up for him, and Lewis uncharacteristically misses the net. But if this is it, and they are getting something out of Elias Manuel that they didn't get last year, he's matched the number of goal contributions he had for all of last season, but there's going to have to be that one other acquisition if they're going to play in the deep end of the pool in MLS. And Mark, that deep end gets deeper and deeper every year because the league's getting better.
The league's getting better and big teams are bringing in big, expensive talent from Europe. And we know how Red Bull has played their player acquisition game over the last few years. And yes, you can make the argument, Emil Forsberg, the biggest acquisition this team has made probably since Thierry Henry. They're in the top 10 in salary, primarily, almost exclusively because of what Forsberg is making. And yet he's missed 8 of 22 matches due to either injury or absence for international play. And like you said, I mean, perhaps the League Cup is coming at a perfect time for him because sparing trips overseas to play a few minutes with Sweden, because he's certainly not a starting player anymore. You would think that he would be rested and ready for the 11 match, sprint to the postseason. I want to return our attention a little bit to John Tolkin, named to the U.S. Olympic team, which is not a surprise for fans of this podcast and folks that have been following Tolkin's career. There's been a lot said that he's perhaps taken a little bit of a step back this season as Schwarz's system does not require him to be so thrown into the attack so often. He doesn't have to deliver that perfect pass or a corner kick in order for New York to do well. I'm curious what your overall general thoughts are for Tolkin. It's an 18-man roster, which is very unforgiving. And the team will have to host France in the first match, obviously looking to advance out of the second and third group matches. Curious your thoughts on Tolkin as well and the U.S. men's national team. I thought it was brilliant adding Walker Zimmerman to the roster late as one of the overage players.
We were hearing about Walker Zimmerman as much as 3 to 4 months ago, how this would sort of be the topping on his contribution to U.S. soccer. So John Tolkin, assuming he is the number 1 left back on this team, and I think that's a good assumption for now, is going to get to play on a very good back line on a very big stage. By the way, as nice as we all feel for John Tolkin, I feel for Daniel Edelman, who helped the United States
Yes,
qualify for these
Yeah.
games for the first time since 2008, and he's not going to be a part of it. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
I think where we are with John Tolkien and this notion that he's taken a step back, I certainly see where that comes from and how perhaps it's the square peg in the round hole with what Sandro is trying to implement for this team. It seems to me that the moons have never aligned here for John Tolkien exactly either. Now, he's going to compete for time with Caleb Wiley. This is a good time to bring this up. And Wiley, I think, is the player of the two. Most people will agree has the bigger upside. Number one, he's a little bit younger than John Tolkien. Number two, he's probably faster. And I think the numbers that have been reported with this supposed move to Chelsea for 8.5 million pounds kind of speaks to where people see him in the transfer pecking order. I think this is a big summer for John Tolkien. I think he needs to own these Olympics. I think he needs to play some of the best soccer that he's played in these games in France coming up in a couple of weeks. If he's going to go, I think this has to be a major launch pad for him. But putting into context him taking the step back, there are strikers in this league who help the fullbacks gain this reputation.
Yes.
Brooks Lennon is a perfect example of this, right? This is somebody who got to play for a year and a half with Giakoumakis, okay? If Yorgos Giakoumakis was on the Red Bulls for the last year and a half before this move out to Mexico, do you think John Tolkien's assist total is closer to 4, or do you think it's closer to 11 or 12 by the time the seasons come to an end? So the Red Bulls have never provided him with that kind of target to make those numbers a little bit more robust, in all fairness to him. But he's got a lot of fight in him. He's a good player. But I also think if he's going to go, if there's really this next level for John Tolkien, I think that has to be evident for an international viewing audience coming up, starting with these games in Paris. I think it's tremendously important for him.
Yeah, for sure. New York goes out to one of it is the last farthest match they'll travel to for the season, which is a little nutty considering it's just after July 4th. But they'll be visiting a Colorado side that obviously is going to be a meaningful match for Red Bull fans, and that's because it's led by Chris Armas, and of course Omer Fernandez is playing out there, and they are in a very similar spot that New York is, a team that really truly went through a rebuilding in the offseason, and they're right in line. They're a point away from New York on the table. They're 4th in the West, just as the Red Bulls are 4th in the East. I don't think anyone would necessarily consider them to be among the league's elite teams, but they're definitely a member of that second tier where it's very, very tough. And it's been, I think for Rapids fans, it's been a fantastic season, pulling together a number of MLS veterans. And Chris Armas is showing that, well, maybe he can coach after all as a head coach, and he can coach in this league. I'm curious if you've seen any of Colorado. I know it's early in the week, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I'm going to get one of their games for the first time a week from Saturday when they play Real Salt Lake, which is going to be a terrific test for them.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that stood out, according to the people that I've spoken with about what's going on in Colorado, you would be amazed how much Chris has brought the team together. And what was evident on Saturday night in their most recent win against St. Louis, goal celebrations, and there were 4 of them in their most recent win. The coaching staff and the players, you see it. They're together as a group. And that's something that I think a lot of people doubted, a culture that Armas could create. Now, he's got a very big test coming up in the next couple of weeks because this is that pocket of the schedule where he misses his best player. Georgi Mihailovic is going to be gone. So that's a gaping hole for him. But what I think they've done to this point is A, develop an identity, B, Armas proves to the world that, I do have a clue here, and maybe I didn't get all that much of a fair shake in my last stop in this league in Toronto. He never got to coach a home game, folks. That was a very big deal during the COVID era. They finally went back to Toronto. I think it was maybe 2 weeks after he was fired. All of that said, I think they're also showing people that that kind of style kind of works at the high altitude. And if you're going to play that team and get in the day before the game, You're going to have to bring it to get a result. Are they in that same stratosphere with the two LA teams? Certainly not at this point, but they've got something very good going there for the first time in a long time, and credit to him.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously, the altitude played such a huge role with matches there. Lastly, because it's all about former Red Bulls coaches, Jesse Marsh here in the tri-state area as his Canadian side really takes on a massive assignment on Tuesday night as they face Argentina at MetLife in the Copa semis. A lot has been made about Jesse feeling hard done when U.S. Soccer turned their back on him and returned to Greg Berhalter. I'm just kind of curious what your overall thoughts are about that coming together.
Name a person on this earth who deserves to coach a game in New Jersey before 80,000 people more than Jesse Marsh. Because they didn't fill the place when he produced some of the most exciting teams and winning teams in Major League Soccer, just a short trip down the road at Red Bull Arena. Although I know fans love that team. I'm kind of saying this a little bit in jest. It's hard for me to process where this is going long term. The reality is, by the way, he's in the semifinals of Copa America. Canada's won only once in the 6 games in which he's managed, if you dismiss the results that they get in shootouts, okay? But there was something good going on in the Canadian infrastructure before Jesse got there, and then it petered out at the World Cup in Qatar for whatever reason, with no success whatsoever. And then the financial difficulties hit that program to the point where you wondered if it could get off the mat. This is a massive tournament just in terms of prize money to help the Canadian Federation get back to a certain level. And MLS is enjoying this because MLS now has an invested interest in what goes on in Canadian soccer. This will not be easy for Argentina in this game tomorrow night. That's the one thing I will point to. Now, I don't know if Messi is 100%, and that's playing a part in my logic here. But if you're giving Jesse Marsh 6 or 7 days to come up with something to stop what still might be the best national team in the world, I think he's going to play this well. And I'll be surprised if we're not in the 85th minute on Tuesday night, still wondering who's going to win this game. Argentina has more game breakers. Argentina is a better team. You don't check any advantage box for Canada whatsoever, but I can still see him finding a way to keep his team in this game.
It will be fascinating to watch. And we know Jesse stopped by the training facility over the weekend, and great having him back in the area for sure. And great having Steve Cangialosi on Seeing Red as always, sir. Thank you so much. Do you know where your assignment is this weekend?
I will be in Cincinnati on the heels of their 6-1 victory to take the top of the conference. They take on Charlotte.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Anytime.
All right, we've got more Seeing Red coming up after this short break. We are back at Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. New York starts 3 matches in 8 days with Saturday's match at Colorado. Again, they have both Montreal and Cincinnati at home. We've got a little summer vacation plan here at Seeing Red HQ, and so we will not be back next week, but we will be back the following week after those matches to talk Leagues Cup. I'm seeing Leagues Cup ads. There's a Geico ad for Leagues Cup with a family singing Ole Ole in a car that the mom then cracks the windshield singing Ole Ole. And yeah, okay.
I don't like this.
Yeah. You can write us anytime at seeingredny@gmail.com. Mike, do you have thoughts on who will win the Copa America and the Euros?
Euros, I'm kind of seeing Spain. They've impressed me. I will say that for Euros, I'm going to go Canada because I want
For
chaos.
Copa. For
Copa, I'm just gonna go Canada because, just because I would adore the fact if Canada was the first CONCACAF team to win Copa America. It'd be the creme de la creme of people who say that the USA has outgrown CONCACAF to have Canada win Copa America.
Earlier in the show, you may have heard Steve Cangialosi say not to be surprised if the game is in doubt late into regular time. So we wish our friend Jesse Marsh luck, friend of the show. It's amazing what he's done. We should hear. Let me ask you this: Berhalter is turned away, or he's given the reins once again?
The fact that we're getting announcements for announcements and and it's all being very shadowy. It feels like he's gone. It feels like almost they are asking him to resign and he's not because he wants I can't say that's any sort of fact, but like this whole situation is just so we're seeing teams who got eliminated from Copa America like fire their coaches already, who did better than America did. And to see how this is all going, I think he's gone, but there's something holding up the process, and it just makes it all but more worse.
Yeah. And who do you see coming in? I mean, are they? Jurgen's July 4th Instagram post about how much he loved his time in America set people like spinning.
It's so, man. You say athletes aren't actors or athletes aren't politicians. They're perfect at it. I don't think it's going to be him because I think he's too much money.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see someone from MLS, from the country. I don't know. I think I have a lot of respect for the job that Pat Noonan has done to FC Cincinnati. And I think that
I'm sorry. For them to get rid of Greg Berhalter, to go to to a coach that's only coached in MLS is literally going to set American soccer fandom.
Not only that,
night.
Hey, where was Greg Berhalter before the U.S. men's national team?
I think he was in Columbus.
So Ohio, baby. We're just gonna keep taking from Ohio.
No.
Look, I don't know. I saw someone suggest Tab Ramos, and I started giggling because I love Tab Ramos, but I don't see his resume owning up to anything for that. But I'm not of the opinion that you need to get a Jurgen Klopp or you need to get a special one from Europe. I think there are totally options that you could take from MLS, and I think the people who cry about, oh, it's just MLS coach is just look at this Canada team with a lot of MLS players. And you're going to tell me that MLS isn't worth looking at?
Listen, you can make the argument that Jesse was hard done because they kept him hanging and then they went back to Greg. This is literally how it works for any job anywhere in the world. So, you keep a guy warm and then you're like, yeah, we moved in a different direction. Sorry. And if you have sour grapes, I mean, this is just the nature of the beast. The idea that Carlo Ancelotti was taking in the tournament in a Montana ranch house, enjoying his summer vacation, which was absolutely incredible. I know Hervé Renard is free. He was the French women's coach who is currently without a role. I think that would be a really interesting choice. I don't know. The next coach has to be a real taskmaster. I mean,
someone was actually trying to make a play for Jim Curtin, and I thought, what year do they think it is?
I mean, Jim Curtin, I think, had an opportunity. I think he interviewed for the role. Nevertheless, good to talk. Here's our one email tonight with Francis Pfeiffer. Says, Dear Seeing Red, I've been watching your show all season. I want to say I love the new YouTube channel. Your insights and commentary are always well made and enjoyable. Well made. With early July upon us, it's a natural time to reflect on the first half of the season. We now have a substantial number of games to analyze, and the team can start focusing on transfers and improvements for the final stretch. And just so you all know, the transfer window opens on the 17th. and there's nothing to stop the Red Bulls from making an announcement before that. But any new players coming in have to wait till the 17th. I'd love to hear your opinion on the team's direction. Are we on track, or are we falling short of the expectations this team should be meeting? Our fan base is incredible, embodying the true New York, New Jersey spirit. With its passion and love for this club, like shows like yours and the dedicated supporters groups demonstrate how we relentlessly defend and critique our favorite club. In my humble opinion, the season feels like a breath of fresh air compared to the chaos and mediocrity of the last 5 seasons since March left. However, I am nervous and would consider it a significant setback if the team didn't continue to grow and build on this momentum, as we are not yet a top contending club. Thanks for all you do, Frank, in section 128. A lot to break down there. I'm going to focus on, are we on track, or are we falling short of the expectations the team should be meeting? That's there's a lot in that sentence. Your thoughts, sir?
I think the fact that people like you and I were invited to a roundtable with this team to discuss what the team has to do sort of answers that question, in that the team is falling short, and they do need to make improvements. Now, the phrase "falling short" implies failure, and I will say the Rebels aren't failing; they are just not achieving all that they should be achieving, and they're just going to have to. They're going to have to try and keep what works without breaking it while they try to fix what isn't working. And if that means bringing in people during the transfer window, you need to be careful, because if you put the wrong card in the wrong place, the whole pyramid falls down.
Well, we know that they had. I mean, De Guzman said point blank, "We are going to replace Frankie Amaya."
Yes,
and I think that's the minimum. And if you may have watched last week's show, or may not have, but I asked once again, is that all you got? And we were told, we'll see. So, and De Guzman drew everyone's attention to the first 10 games of the season versus the first 10 games of the season last year. And obviously it was night and day, right? The team exploded out of the block. They very quickly. I mean, this is a team that has not been below the playoff line at all this year, and they are contending for a home playoff spot. And, for me, I want to focus on, are we falling short of the expectations the team should be meeting? Now, if the expectations the team has is not where I'm sure the expectations that the fans are, right? They made this huge investment in Emil Forsberg. He's going to wind up playing at least half of the team's games through the League's Cup. And then, I think it's too soon to say. I mean, if you're a fan and who thinks the team literally should be doing everything in their power to win MLS Cup exclusively, to the detriment to anything else, I think you would say that the team is falling short of expectations the team should be making. And I don't necessarily, I really believe, and I said this last week, I think the team feels that, getting a top 4 seed is a pathway to winning MLS Cup.
It almost feels like, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Yeah, no, please.
It almost feels like a toned down version of what happens in the Premier League. Because if you look at Premier League fans, and we've dealt with this, we see Premier League fans from the Big Six, they could be in 4th place and they're complaining about not being in first.
Right.
And I understand that there's different economics, there's different, Champions League spots, and the money is different, no salary cap. But I do have to say that to hear fans, there's a difference between being annoyed and appreciating like what we're doing right, and thinking the whole thing has to be burned down.
No,
and
they're doing a lot right.
They're doing a lot right. And to hear people say like we're just biding our time until we collapse, I'm like, you sound like a Mets fan. Like, so you got to calm down a bit.
Well, first of all, they've got 3 decades of history, and the Mets have won 2 titles, so before most of you were born. But I think there's something to it. I also think 1 win in 5, a win in 4 draws against, frankly, the bottom of the East is going to give a lot of people pause, right? The Philly, DC, and New England are among the bottom 4 teams in the East, and New York didn't beat any of them, and they lost to New England. And so you can understand the notion of playing down to your opponent is what I think makes people crazy. And yes, they've been playing these games without Emil Forsberg, and yes, they dealt with a missing Lewis Morgan while he was on the road. And so then the argument is it realistic to expect this team can still compete and win without Morgan and Forsberg? They're 2 most important players, clearly, maybe other than Coronel. And the answer is no. And so I guess the question is, as the team sits in 4th place, it doesn't really seem that anyone else that was affected in a big way by Euros and Copa has dealt really any better, because New York has been kind of idling in 2nd gear over the last month, and it hasn't really hurt him too much.
I think it's funny. It just what you just said there kind of reminded me of a statement I read. I forget what website it was on. It could have been Reddit or it could have been Twitter, where fans were talking about Copa America, and their definitive response was that they kind of wish they had second-rate players from Europe versus the top guys from Central and South America,
who are
gone. And I think back to when the Red Bull had a lot more of that, where we had people going to
Castro,
Venezuela.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Maria.
But even when we had those spurts, we didn't necessarily feel it as much, because I felt like we had the depth to not totally replace them, but to bandage the problem until they got back. Even though we're not using as many top guys from there, we have more Europeans who are getting called up. And now we're struggling to replace both sets who are going to both their tournaments at the same time. And we don't have the depth to totally patch up the issues for a month span. We don't have that.
That's right. And so 3 games, and then we head to Leagues Cup, and then we can all kind of take a breath. We can see what happens in the transfer window, and then we can really figure out just what this team is, because I appreciate the better play for sure over the first part of the season, but what New York doesn't want is another first round exit, because that's what it's been the last number of years. Nevertheless,
do you not count the wild card as not getting out of the first round?
Well, I mean, it was a home playoff victory that was a phenomenal night, but at the end of the day, it was not a first round. It was not a first round. It was the play-in round.
Just making sure. Sure.
No, it was fantastic. It was great. Elias Manuel had a hat trick, the only playoff hat trick in team history. But
Tom Barlow had a goal.
But yeah. So nevertheless, we've come to an end of episode 581 of Seeing Red. I want to thank Zach Feldman for his stats. As always, I want to thank Steve Cangialosi for stopping by. And Mike Batista, where can fans find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Michael Batista. You can find me writing for Hudson River Blue. I've got some MPSL playoff content coming out this week, talking to a local former pro who's going into the playoffs starting on Wednesday.
Cool.
And you can also find me writing about the U.S. Open Cup on thecup.us and ussoccer.com once in a while. And if you want just my Red Bull stuff, you can find me on New York Sports Nation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. Again, we're off next week. Lots going on in Fishkin Land, but we miss you, Joe. We miss you, Joe, so much, and we're thinking about you all the time. Thank you so much again for watching for episode 581 of Seeing Red. It's Mark saying good night, everyone. Let's go Red Bulls. Bye-bye.